Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer90.com. Check out all the latest FC Dallas, North Texas, and U.S. men's national team gear, including the FC Dallas One Planet kit, this year's new Adidas Parlay kit made out of recycled material. What a great way to help take care of the planet. Use recycled waste in a kit. You can get that in both youth and adult sizes. Use code Third Degree at checkout to get 20% off your entire order. Some exclusions may apply.
Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to episode 207 of Third Degree, the podcast. It me, Peter. And today we are without Dan Crooke, who
What?
I know. I think he has departed our shores to head back to his motherland to eat bland food and attend exciting lower division football matches. So good luck to him and his beard and his wife. And I hope they have a great time. But instead, you are stuck with just me and your hero, my hero, everybody's hero, editor, founder of thirddegree.net and all things good in the world, Buzz Carrick. Come in, Buzz.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for joining me on this beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day. Man, we've had a good run of weather of late, have we not?
Yeah, the last 4 or 5 days have been really nice. It's going to be fun tonight, too, with the U.S. national team playing tonight after we're recording this podcast. You won't hear this podcast till after the game, but still, it'll be fun for us tonight to watch the U.S. play Mexico.
I know. It's a weird world we live in where you have to have an HBO Max account to watch your national team play soccer. But it also is a game that has absolutely zero meaningless value and is essentially largely a waste of everybody's time. So if you don't get to watch the game because you don't have HBO Max, then you probably aren't going to end up missing much, I would predict. And since we last talked, there was the change. Before we get into results of the game, we do need to mention that Paul Arriola was recalled back because of hamstring stuff, and Paxton Pomykal got a call-up along with Jesus. So that's, I guess there's something good in there.
Yeah, obviously that's fantastic to see Paxton get recalled. He's been playing really well lately, so I think it's great.
Yeah, he was great on Saturday night. Paxton, in my mind, was epic in this match. He was all over the place. That really is the best of Paxton Pomykal in that particular game, right, Buzz?
Oh, yes, I would agree completely.
Well, I'll start there. I've got other places to go, but since you brought up Paxton,
sure,
go ahead and just start with his kick-ass performance.
No, we'll start with him. And I think, for me, now, look, you can throw a lot of stats out there about how good he was. He had a whole lot of touches, 36 carries, which was, I think, first on the team at 8 progressive, a whole bunch of recoveries. He passed at a really high rate. He had some good long balls. But not all those stats are just like, okay, those are Paxton always does. For me, the difference is something that I think doesn't show up in pure numbers. It only shows up if you're watching and you've watched him for a long time and know what kind of player he is, and you know how he has, over the years, in my opinion, almost run himself into the ground. What's changing in Paxton, and we're watching it change in front of us, is his wisdom about the game is changing. When to expend himself, when to go, when not to go. He's not there yet, but he's making big strides in the right direction. And
he's covering a ton of ground still,
which is good because that's what makes him good, is his ability to do that. But read the game and know when to do it so that in the 90th minute, you can make that play where he got in behind and made that silky bring down of the ball and took it to the corner.
Oh, yeah.
That whole sequence was just so good in terms of wisdom of the game, learning how to control, and just overall his game control is vastly improving this season. That's the new progression for this young man. And again, he's not there yet, but he's making great strides in this way. And I thought, and that for me is the part that gives me the most excitement watching him play, is these small, steady, and now starting to be obvious, these moments of understanding, like that one late that was so good.
Yeah, that touch that he had in the corner late in the game was dead sexy, and I think that is sexier than I think he thinks his mustache is when he grows it out.
It's way sexier than the mustache.
Yes, although he's got a anyway. All right, well, let me get back to how I originally intended to get into FC Dallas 2, Real Salt Lake 1, which was, I'm going to try really hard here to put on my Bambi Thumper hat. And, as they told Thumper, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything. So I'm just going to say, yay, Dallas won.
Yeah, well, they did win 2-1, but this was just about the most boring game I've ever seen. For 85 minutes, it was just absolutely awful, awful soccer. Watching two teams play a mid-block against each other, neither one that pressed at a high percentage, neither one necessarily wanting the ball back, just lollygag the ball around the infield for 85 minutes. It was absolutely awful to watch. But again, in the end, what matters is a win went into the scorecard, went into the standings, because they don't show in the standings how pretty it was. All it shows is the points. And that's something that this team in the past has struggled with, and now is actually getting a little better at grinding out numbers and points and getting themselves moving up the standings.
Okay. Dan's not here, so I guess this is going to have to be to make this podcast episode entertaining. I'll have to at least play somewhat of the contrary in here, all right? But as the show pessimist and somebody who last week got caught a little bit of slack for not being 100% positive about the thing, I contend that this game in particular continues to support my concern about the long-term the long-term outcome of where this is headed, at least for this particular season. And I'm specifically concerned about the fact of the performances from Paul Arriola and Lletget over not just in this game, but over the course of the season. I just feel like something has changed with those guys. But in this game, Arriola dealing with some sort of hamstring thing, and then of course poor Sebastian, who's also dealing with the fact that just a few hours prior to the start of the game, his fiance was passively aggressively dumping him on stage at Coachella. So maybe I should give him a little bit of slack. But I do think there's something to be worried about there, Buzz. Where do you get your positivity from is what I need to understand.
Well, I will agree with you. I think both those guys are not playing up to last year's standards. Ariola's been struggling with that hamstring for several weeks now. They've been trying to nurse him through it rather than shutting him down. And I think Lletget's probably getting closer to, but again, I don't know the guy personally, so I couldn't possibly tell you how his mental state is, but I can't imagine that it was very good, and hopefully we'll see some progression soon. But my positivity about this team only comes from this sort of, I don't know whether you call it this resiliency or this gumption or this grit they have in order to grind out some numbers, to grind out some results. And they've shown this under Coach Nico Esteez last year too, and it's carried over to this year. Whether it be grind out a result on the road, whether it be grind out a horribly boring, awful game at home, they're able to get these points in the standings. And in the end, that's what really matters. But there's still a line here. There's a clear delineation between Dallas in fourth, who is the, if you will, the best of the rest, versus the top three, all of whom have these goal differentials of 9 points, 10 points, 11 points, and all have points per games over 2, whereas Dallas leads the group that's under 2 in terms of points per game and only has this 3 goals against and is ahead of the guys that have 2 and 1 and so on and so forth. So there's a lack of top end competition here. And speaking of the Western Conference now, but there's still an ability to get results. And sometimes it's important to get results, particularly when you have a game like this one where it wasn't just that it was boring. Dallas was awful. I mean, I know they scored 2 goals, but they only had 4 shots, period. And the 2 that were on goal were not saved, and those are the 2 goals. When you have 4 shots at home, that's horrible.
Yeah.
They got outplayed almost across the board by Real Salt Lake in almost every phase, but yet Dallas got the result, and sometimes that's what matters most.
Sure, winning is ultimately the goal, and at this point at the end of the season, nobody's going to remember how they ended up beating Salt Lake on this particular night. But 4 shots, not even 4 shots on goal, just 4 shots at home. Is a continued problem, and I know there was some tactical changes in this. I got to tell you, I was really, really disappointed in the performance by Jimenez. I was excited to see him get a start at home like this, and I don't know what I'm expecting out of that guy, but I didn't. So far, Not too excited about that.
Well, we
Shocker.
talk a lot about this team being good in transition. They're good when they are moving quickly, whether it be a build out from the back, getting forward quickly, or whether they're recovering in midfield, or whether they do some kind of press and turn it over and then move quickly. He works well. Jimenez does, particularly with Jesus, when he and both of them are moving. They play well off each other. Well, in this game, the tactic clearly from Dallas was, especially once they went up a goal, was to just sort of sit around in the midfield.
Right.
2 blocks against each other. So, you're watching 2 guys not really move very much. I don't think either Jimenez or Jesus had a good game other than the fact that Jesus scored. Neither one of those guys really did much for the team, but then really neither did anybody else. They were content just to sort of hang around for most of it, which was, we've seen this trend, I think, when Dallas thinks they're better than the other team, this particular version of FC Dallas thinks they're better than the other team, they can be flat. And I think once they scored that early goal, they're like, we got this. And so they were kind of flat. Whether it's a conscious thing or a subconscious thing, I couldn't really say. I really think a lot of it probably is subconscious, but you do see the games when he is moving and they are counter attacking and they are, counter pressing and they are building quickly from the back. He and Jesus do interact well and worked well together, but I don't think you can see in Jimenez a guy that's going to score like 20 goals or anything. If he were to get close to 10, I'd be amazed because he'll be probably more of a facilitator than he will an actual goal scorer in terms of whether it be direct assists or whether it just be helping the action happen.
Well, let's get back to thinking about the good stuff. Giovane Jesus. Giovane Jesus.
Yeah.
I think we all see that there is something interesting there from the guy. He just looks like an athlete. And I know there are a lot of Tuamasi fans that listen to this podcast. I'm a Tuamasi fan, but it shouldn't come as a shock to everybody or anybody that a guy who came up through the system in Brazil it may turn out to be a better option than a guy who came up through the college system in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, there's one thing to say that one player might be playing bad, but I don't think that's the case here. I don't think Imo Tomasi played badly when he was playing, but once Giovane Jesus got in there, he has just played better. And so sometimes in a competitive situation when you have 2 guys going head to head for one spot, you just have a guy contributing more.
Hold on. But let me say this, Buzz. I don't mean that as a knock on Tuamasi, meaning he came from the college system. I mean, he's done a lot, coming from that setup, right? Because not a lot of guys make it this far coming up through the college system anymore these days, right? I think that's fair to say. But I do think that it's a function of pedigree to some point. And hey, the guy has come up through a pretty decent Brazilian club situation and through their system. And I don't think we should all be surprised if he turns out to be a better option than Tuamasi. That's all I'm trying to say.
Oh, yeah. No, I would agree with that. I mean, Tuamasi is a Generation Adidas player, which meant that he was tagged early out of college, which is where the best players do come. But, he still was coming out of college, at the same age or even older than Jesus Jimenez. Sorry, not Jesus Jimenez. I got my Jesus confused. Giovane Jesus was.
Too many Jesuses.
Too many Jesuses, I know. So little time. He's just 21. Which in terms of like a global stage is not a baby by any means, but at the same time, Tuamasi coming out of college still took 2 or 3, maybe it was even 4 seasons before he progressed into where he was a big part of the team, whereas Giovane is stepping right in and adding a lot to the team. So yes, it's a different level of pedigree.
Yeah.
I'm a little surprised that he's becoming this big a contributor this quickly. But there are some good and some bad on what he's doing. We shouldn't let the really good see what the issues were and why took him so long to get in, and some of what the issues still are. Like, for example, if you look at some of the metrics, Dallas did a thing on him today on the metrics, and you can see that some of them are trouble spots, including like individual pressuring, which means like he's not really playing much, tight defense. He's kind of sitting off players, right? Mm-hmm. His passing percentage is actually quite low for an outside back. Now, some of that, of course, is because he's getting into the final third more than a lot of outside backs, but still, when you're talking about 71-ish, 2-ish%, that's not where you want it to be for an outside back. His ball progression is actually really poor, relatively speaking, which is ball progression is when you receive it and you actually move it up the field yourself. He's always just quickly passing it off or moving backwards. He's not dribbling. He's not doing any successful dribbling, relatively speaking. So while there are parts of it that are off the charts amazing, which is the crossing and the percentages of the crossing and the dispossession he does do when he does close down, which is mostly happening higher up the field. There's so many positives there that right now it's overcoming the negatives. I've talked a lot about these bad passes he's making in training that for some reason vanish in the game. He's apparently a big game heady kind of player where he steps it up a gear, which is the total opposite of other guys we've seen that are sometimes even flat or worse when they get into a game. So some positives with him there. I can't even come close to telling you that he should now sit for any reason at all. He's definitely got that spot locked down until he starts making some massive mistakes, which I don't anticipate happening given how he's not so far in the time he's gotten. And it's a drag for Tuamasi, but we're going to have to talk a lot about man management, and I'll talk about it later when we get to the training report, but there's going to be chances for Tuamasi this season just purely based on numbers, and we'll talk about why later. But, for now, it's going to be Giovanni the whole way.
And with Farfan on the other side, you actually now kind of feel, the attitude about this team in terms of its fullbacks when it's playing its traditional setup, you got to feel pretty good about because they're both decent defenders and good getting forward as needed.
Yeah, I don't think Farfan's as good as Giovanni getting forward, and Farfan did get beat on the goal the last against RSL, so that wasn't good. But
right,
it's funny that he was.
But
named
Buzz, he got
Team
of the Week nomination.
Yeah, I was like, what in the world? I thought he was just okay in this game, and then he got Team of the Week because he had the assist on the game winner. That's why he got Team of the Week. I thought there were games this year where he's been way better, and there have been some games where I thought he should have been Team of the Week and he wasn't. So. That Team of the Week thing is driven by numbers kind of, so it's
popularity contest, Buzz.
It's goals and assists is what it is. So, it is what it is. He deserves some recognition for his overall really strong season. This definitely wasn't one of his better games in my opinion.
Right.
But, you feel pretty healthy about your situation at outside back. On both sides, you have two guys that can compete. We're going to have to see Junka too coming up. You'll see him somewhere eventually here. So more than just for 20 minutes.
I also I think this is a good time to pause. Hey, you see what I'm about to do here? And talk about the performance of our Dutch goalkeeper who had a largely stellar. I mean, it was funny. Somebody pointed this out that the Real Salt Lake social media video clip looked more like a Martin Paz highlight reel because he stole some. I thought he was the man of the match, and is not a good thing when you're at home. When you're playing at home to have your goalkeeper man of the match, but definitely deserved.
Well, he had 4 saves on the day, and one of them was quite good. The reason that they were making fun of the social media is because RSL has a sponsored save of the game, and their guy had no saves, so they went with a pause save and tried to play it up. They did it because it was a great shot by their guy, which it was, and it was a great save, which it was. But it was funny that their guy had no saves. So I've been in that boat in TV where you have a save of the game sponsor, your keeper stinks. It's like, what do you do?
Yeah, we can talk more about this a little bit later, but if you happen to be watching on the Apple subscription server or MLS Season Pass, and you chose to listen to the local radio call, you're aware of the fact that Mark Dodd, the great, yes, not just any, but the great Dallas Burn original goalkeeper Mark Dodd, was part of the analysis along with Steve and Owen. And I'll talk more about that later, but it was really interesting to hear Dodd's reactions and thoughts about Mountain Paws, especially in real time when he was making those saves, because you could tell very genuinely in Mark's reaction to those 2 or 3 moments, he was like, okay, yeah, that's pretty spicy work there by the kids. So it was kind of cool to hear and listen to that in real time.
Yeah, the guy's a phenomenal shot stopper, and his reactions are fantastic. The one weak spot he has, and the reason why I think he's in Major League Soccer, is that his feet are just okay. They're just average, which is the difference between being here and being at Real Madrid.
Right. Or Ajax.
Or whatever it is. Yeah, playing for the Dutch national team. And you can evidence of that is that one of the press triggers was when Dallas was trying to build out of their own box when if you've watched enough Dallas this year, they're doing this split thing where the center backs drop on the outside of pause, and so they can play laterally across the box with that ball if they want to. So when one of those center backs would pass back to pause in the box, that was one of the RSL press triggers, which is indicative of the fact that he's not super great with the ball at his feet under pressure. Neither are either one of those center backs. So that's a concern area in terms of the big picture going forward, particularly because that's one of the ways this team wants to play, was the complete build from the back. So again, this is Major League Soccer. No one's going to be a perfect player. The shot stopping, the goal saving, the big saves when you need them in the big moments, the PK saves that he's really, really good at, all those things so overvalue this one small flaw, which so far, not that I can remember, has not resulted in a goal, like a direct giveaway from his feet. There have been some danger moments that have scared us. But I big picture wise, it's 98% great with this little 2% problem.
Let's move to the center backs. You had Martinez and Ibby out there. That was the first. I guess that's the first time we've seen them since. Was that opening game?
Well, it was either opening or second game. It was really early in the season. Yeah. I hated it. Yeah. So I talked to Coach. That was my opening question to Coach, was to grab him by the neck and, what are you doing not starting? Well, part of it is man management. Again, we'll talk about it more later, but it's load a little bit. Nicosi's played a lot since he came in a couple of games into the season. Also, Coach really wants all three of those guys to be constantly competing, and for none of them to think like they have it made on lockdown, and for none of them to be thinking they're out of the picture of those three. So some of it is just matchup, some of it is the tactics, some of it is rotation, some of it is management of personalities and desire and things like that, and work effort out of certain guys. So it's all part of it, and hopefully we're going to see Nicosi back this week. I really hope, because I did not like that combo at all.
Yeah, it is a little bit clunky between the two, and both of them, because we've seen them both fall victim to their own kind of I don't know if it's I don't know. There's something about they both feel really frightening in open space, so it's a weird pairing. We talked about midfield. We talked about the forwards. Anything else about individual performances from this game you wanted to get into?
I think second straight game, I thought Facundo was basically fine. Solid. He's
the formation probably helps him.
Formation helps a lot when you have when you're in what is actually a 4-4-2, even though it's a modern one. Those outside wing mids do slide back and play and cover a lot of the width, so he's not asked to be really mobile. His role there is sort of a distributor from that spot. They're not asking him to dribble drive out of there. That's Paxton's back there with him to do that. To do the dribble linking and the heavy work, the linking. He's there to provide outlets. Solid from him. I honestly think that in my gut, in my soccer dome, I would start Edwin every game, even if it doesn't be a good matchup. I want Edwin to learn, so I want him in there every single time. But Facundo's doing perfectly acceptable work when he's in there. They're paying him a lot of money, load management-wise. Okay, fine for me. They did win, so I don't have any complaints about him. Even though it's not what I would choose, I don't have any big complaints about him.
All right, we just one more time, because it was such a good performance. Yay, Pax.
Yeah, he was phenomenal.
Do we really want him getting any time tonight with the national team? I'm really torn over that.
20.
Yeah,
20
just
minutes?
20 minutes? Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to see him have a positive showing too. He doesn't have to score any goals or anything. Number one, I hope they use him in a real position and not like as a wing. Mm-hmm. That would be dumb. Use him as a box-to-box 8, in a proper way. That would be nice to see him in there. My only other game comment I want to make is that as good as I thought Giovanni was, there were like 4 different occasions where the ball came to him where he was supposed to trap it and it squirted under his foot. The 3 of the times he was up in an offensive sort of position, but one time he was in the back and I almost spit my Pepsi all over the place. Although they switched to Coke now, they say that, so that's not a Pepsi anymore.
Oh, right. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Get right with the kid there.
Oh, nice. I'm not letting that sponsor now, am I?
No. Okay, and then I think we also need to at least spend some time. It was funny. I spent some time talking about Bernard Kamungo, which is everybody that listens to this pod totally is aware of the kid's story. It's so cool. It's great. It's really fun to be able to retweet the highlight of his moment in this game and point out the fact that it wasn't that long ago he was, they spotted him playing high school soccer. It wasn't club soccer or academy. It was high school soccer in Abilene, of all things. It's just a great story.
Yeah.
But I also, when the moment happened, in my head, I don't know why I have this impression in my head, but I went, oh, I'll be damned. Dallas did it again. They rolled out a homegrown for the first time in a home debut, and he scores. And I don't know if Jesus singularly has built this narrative in my head, but for some reason in my head, there were multiple times where Dallas rolled out some kid in a home debut, and he scored for them in the game. But I guess this is only the second time it's happened. But
well, I'll break your bubble even more. That wasn't his debut.
Oh, that's right. He played. But was his home? Was it his home debut?
No, it was at a home game last year. He got in, and remember we talked about at the end of last season. We were like, oh, we saw more in 20 minutes than O'Brien's done all year. Yeah. Remember we had that discussion.
Man, why do you got to do that to me?
Because facts and stuff. Right. But let's be real about it. Like you're right. Open tryout kid, right? Legit open tryout. Like where his brother paid his way. He gets into North Texas, and over 2 seasons, he finally gets himself a first-team contract. And let's be real, we made him man of the match. He's my man of the match because of the goal and because of the way of his mentality. Yes, there are flaws in what he did. Yes, he made mistakes.
Yes, he did.
But he's 20, and like his willingness to run at people with the ball and without the ball. Like he even said, like on the goal he scored, he almost stopped running at one point. He's like, "No, screw that, I'm going," and he scored, right? So, look, love that when we're talking about a guy coming off the bench when the game had been so flat and so boring and so awful, he went at people, and so for the last 5-10 minutes of the game, it took him a while to drag Dallas to life, but they finally came back to life at the very end and were able to do some things at the very end, and he got that awesome goal, and what a moment for him. That's why he's the man of the match, even though Paxton had an overall bigger, strong performance. Kamungo's was so bright and so awesome compared to like what the rest of the team was doing. You can't help but love stuff like that because you're right, his story is awesome. Are we going to see a lot of him in a real quick succession? Probably not because you still have guys making $1 million that play some of the same positions, but you got to love the progression for the kid. He'll still bounce back and forth between the first team in North Texas. And what a project and what fun it's going to be watching that kid get better because, listen, there's a lot of upside here with this kid. A lot of upside.
I was delighted for him because it wasn't that long before the goal where he badly turned the ball over and it led to a Salt Lake opportunity. And I thought, oh no, I hope that doesn't crush his spirit or, ruin it for him for a while. But no, he got it done. So it's good for him. It's good for the club. It's good for the brand. It just continues that narrative that Dallas is really good at growing these kids. And I was delighted for him. For sure. Now there's an interesting thing written here in red crayon, and you've even written all of it in capital letters, which tells me you're very concerned about this, Buzz. It says big picture, and it's spelled P-I-K-T. What is, good Lord, Buzz. And underneath that, it says, where would this team be without Jesus Ferreira? What do you mean by that? Ferreira. Where? Yeah. Okay. What's going on here, Buzz? What do you know that we don't know?
On a pure level, he's got 5 goals, and the team as a collective only has a tiny bit more than that. And that's that's my big takeaway. I mean, they have 11 total. He literally has half of them, and nobody else has more than 2. So much of what this team does and the way it plays is built and triggers off of that guy, right? Think about this quick transition. Think about how great Giovanni looks when he's getting those crosses in. Well, if Jesus Ferreira wasn't a really efficient, clean, quick trigger scorer like Jason Christ was, like Jesus also is, if he was Urruti and was blasting 6 out of 7 over, or if he was a guy taking like Mascara taking like 5 touches in the box, right? With this team would be horrible.
Wait, where's your Christian Coleman analogy? Come on, Buzz.
Christian would have tripped over the ball. So, right, or put it like 2 inches wide, do everything right, and then not put it in. Coleman. But that's the thing is like you said, I watched Jimenez and it was like bleh. Okay, imagine if he was the 9, the only 9. If Jesus Ferreira wasn't in this team, how bad would this team be?
Yeah,
the answer is pretty bad.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's just the thing is, right, Jesus is probably going to be in the Gold Cup. I don't know squat about it. I'm just assuming he's going to be on the Gold Cup team, right? So he's going to be gone a bit. Some of that's going to line up with other tournaments, perhaps. I didn't look at the schedule walking in here, but I just worry that so much of what this team does good is predicated on that guy. I mean, he had a bad game. Other than the goal he scored, again, he's doing great things like that. The rest of the game, I thought he was just mediocre for him. And so the whole team was like, bleh, right? I mean, it's just like this game really jumped out at me. Like, man, when Jesus isn't going, this team's not going. So he's the engine and the bus driver at this point. And so you worry about, A, what happens when he's with the U.S., B, what happens if someday they sell him, or C, God forbid, someday he got hurt. So it's just, as a team, collective going forward, especially when Leggett and Areola both are stinking the joint up, in my opinion, this season, they got to figure out something else. And Alan Velasco's still hurt. That was part of it. He was missing, so they're going to have to figure out somebody else that can do something. I think Alan's probably the next best one in terms of how important he is, offensively speaking, given the way Leggett and Areola are going. But, and Paxton's not that in the box guy yet that we want him to be. That's the next phase for him, perhaps. He's still working on the overall game stuff, as much as he is that last second stuff. So I just was watching that game thinking, man, this is what it'll look like when Jesus is gone too.
Yeah, Buzz, maybe we'll find out that Jesus was just simply distracted by finding out his favorite Latina pop star was, announcing her breakup on the Coachella stage earlier in the day, and he was really distracted by that.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know if he cares about such things or not. They were up, and they probably felt RSL was bad, and he probably was, maybe he's thinking about the U.S. game against Mexico coming up.
It's funny. Here's the thought I had during the game. In some ways, scoring so early in the game is a great sign because this, we talk a lot about how Nico teams seem to start so sluggishly historically. So to come out with a little bit of spirit and score a goal so early was good. But I also think in many ways it was the worst thing to happen to this game because Dallas just decided to kind of go into this semi-shell against the team that was already going to be in a semi-shell, and it just turned into, two blocks just kind of banging into each other repeatedly for the next 80 minutes or whatever it was.
Yeah. It wasn't very good. I'll tell you one thing I enjoyed with my conversation with Coach Nico Esteez today is Jesus came up and he was like, yeah, he's not a 10. I thought, yes, he's not. And, I said, we've said that for years. He's not his dad. He's Jason Christ. And I don't think that Coach knew the expression off striker because I said he's an off striker. And he was like, yeah, he's that guy that works with the other guy and maybe is a little bit, behind or side. I said, yeah, off striker. He's like, oh yes, off striker.
I bet there's a Spanish term for that.
I'm sure there is. It's like it's the guy that becomes a false 9 when the other 9 is missing, which is exactly what he is. Exactly what we've talked about. He's not the guy way deep behind in zone 14, as Dan calls it. He's that guy up there with him, the off striker.
Yeah,
Jason Christ. So Bobby Ryan was also an off striker when he was a striker. So. But not as good as Jason Christ, of course.
No. All right. What else? Since you mentioned you talked to Coach Nico at training today, and you did a podcast preview teaser video that you posted on social media earlier. What from training should we know that you promised to tell all of us?
Well, do you want to know? Do you want to start with the player that was surprisingly good? People thought that was fun. I think. Actually.
Can I take a guess?
Yeah, far away.
The player that was surprisingly good.
And I don't mean like just like, oh, that guy was good. I mean like, holy crap, this guy's amazing. Go ahead.
Well, is this like a deep cut or is this
No. It's a current guy. It's
Edwin.
in the mix guy, not like somebody that you never heard of.
Edwin Cerrillo?
No. Hadir O'Brien.
No
fantastic
effing
today.
way. That's impossible.
He scored like every single goal the whole day.
Well, now he's just
amazing.
burned it all at practice.
Between the Velasco injury and maybe other guys, like he recognizes Leggett and Ariel are not playing very well because he was on today. I mean, like
Okay,
ridiculous.
but what does on mean with Hadir O'Brien?
Well, in the big picture of things, this is fascinating to me. The coach asked the grounds crew guys to redo all the lines on the training field this week because of the small fields in New York. So they shrunk the field way down. So all the drills were tight space and they were all rapid transition, taking advantage of line breaks, taking advantage of transitional moments, turnover moments, because you're going to get a lot of them in a tight space game like this.
Hey, wait a second. Before you move on, did you happen to ask them what they measured the field out at?
I said to Coach, it's not 78, and he laughed and scoffed, and he was like, no. He didn't say what it was, but he said it ain't 70. And it's also, they painted it shorter too. It's like 10 yards shorter than SED's field, and just stand there looking at it, like 5 yards shorter on each side. I didn't ask him what it was, but they measured it out exactly the same as New York. Said it was hysterical how different it was.
All right, put a pin in that. We'll come back to it because I don't want to interrupt your other topic, but we do need to talk about that here in a second.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was just, O'Brien was like, sometimes when you watch training, guys just have a good day where they are on fire, and O'Brien was on fire today. He just looked out. If the guy played like that all the time, I'd be like, that dude should be starting.
Okay.
Because he was ridiculously good.
Yeah, but what I'm asking you is that for O'Brien to be on, for anybody to be really good to me, it has to be more than you're just putting the ball on frame. It has to be that you're playing well with your teammates, you're playing well within the system and the structure. That's where I get frustrated by O'Brien, is that I just feel like he's a guy out there doing his own thing and he doesn't work within the system that he's getting paid to play within.
Yeah.
That's my cowbell analogy.
Well, the caveat was that most of it was not like big, huge, full field stuff. Now, again, when you shrink the field down, there's not going to be nearly as much of that stuff. There's going to be a whole lot of transition. The ball's going to be loose a lot. And he was really good about either running into spaces and where teammates could take advantage, or picking up balls, or just all of it was good. Combinations were good. Recovery was good. Effort was good defensively in terms of high pressing when they were triggering. It just was really good. So good that I'm like, if that dude played like that every game, he would be a starter here. But he doesn't, clearly. So, and will he be good this weekend? Who the hell knows, man? Because honestly, in training this year, he's been crap most of the time. The first half of the season, really, season to this point, I think he could tell that he wasn't really in the conversation, that he was out of it pretty much. And he knew young guys coming through were doing really well. But maybe now he's sensing there's a moment here. Even other guys were telling him how good he was, and coach told him how good he was doing. So super weird but mentality and confidence and everything really matters, man. So hopefully he does a good job this weekend. We'll see.
For me, I just think he's largely been kind of absent and ineffectual this season.
Yeah,
maybe we just haven't seen a lot of him,
No.
which is maybe worse than being bad. I don't know. It's kind of weird. So I guess that's going to take us to the game against New York NYCFC this weekend, up on the tiny pitch, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, which is all right. So how do you think, considering Paxton and Jesus are with the national team tonight, we're recording on Wednesday, this will get released Thursday morning. How do you think, the lineup's going to look?
Well, one of the things they were working on today was changing formations in the run of play, basically, like being able to flex shapes.
Mm-hmm.
And be able to swing mid-game for stretches of it from one shape to another shape. Which one they're going to use to start with, and which one you'll see most of the time. Well, I would kind of be guessing at this point, because I think it'll depend on who they have available and how the game's sort of going. In terms of Paxton and Jesus, that obviously will matter a lot in terms of how much they each play. The hardest part about this scenario for them is that they will be traveling back to Dallas on Thursday. They'll be back for a Friday walkthrough or whatever, because there won't be many play. Now, Coach said both of those guys are good enough players and smart enough players that you can just give them the mental notes and write it down on paper, and they'll be like, got it, and they can do it fine, no problem. They don't need to practice it. So if they feel good and don't play too much, because on Friday, then they're turning around and flying to New York, right? So those 2 flights are going to be the hardest part of the recovery of those guys. So like if one or the other of them starts and plays like 70, 80 minutes, man, that's going to be really difficult to turn around and play and start on the weekend. But if a guy plays 20 to 30 minutes, no problem. So, watch the game tonight or look at the box score in the morning, and you'll be able to tell maybe whether you think either one of those 2 guys can go. I mean, obviously, if Jesus can't go, then Jimenez is going to be the guy at the 9. Will they stick with the 4-4-2? That depends on whether, do you like Leggett in that space? Do you like Obrand in that space? Is the other guy with Jimenez? Some of that will come down to coaching decisions. This guy likes to make choices late in the week. Stress points, of course, Giovanni's got the right back spot at this point. I think Nicosia will be back in for sure. I can't imagine he'll be out. Facundo versus Edwin. The tight space would benefit Facundo in terms of the lack of mobility, but Edwin has a really strong ability to take a hit and shield the ball and then dribble away from that pressure. That ability to relieve pressure, I think, will really play well in a small space environment. So I'm kind of leaning Edwin, but then again, I always lean Edwin. So I always try and take my Edwin desires out of it, but I still think he makes a little bit more sense because of that ball protection that he has. And then the real questions are, Ariola's hamstring. He took part in training 100% today, but definitely is not 100%. He definitely, to me, looks slightly off the pace. Leggett just looks flat like he has all year. Velasco did not participate in training. Coach said later that Ariola and Velasco are day-to-day. It'll be determined later in the week whether those guys can go. So, Ariola went today, so I don't know why he wouldn't be able to go. Velasco did not go today, so maybe he's 50-50. So there's a lot of questions about what you might do. Velasco will be really good in the tight space of this game. His ability to dink a couple of guys and break through a line would play really well. Ariola, his game less benefits you in this environment, I think, because his big thing is his movement when he aggressively tries to go at people. And again, like Kamungo did when he came in that game, it's not that he has pace, it's just that he applies pressure because of his skill. So there's a lot to be determined this week. But I think most of it'll be the same kind of systems Dallas has played a lot. The base 4-3-3, we've seen that 4-2-3-1, which is a different version of that, once or twice. And then we've seen that 4-4-2 a lot lately. Jesus or not is going to be a big key for that, and we'll find out tonight based on how much he plays. So that's the best answer I can give you right now.
All right. Well, your comment about Leggett looking flat, I know we all have. Look, I certainly have had a lot of fun, referencing the whole situation and just kind of the overtop ridiculousness of it. But we all, I can fully understand that the wear and tear, the mental wear and tear, and the attitude issues that are going to come out of a guy who is so publicly, this whole thing is happening so publicly, and because of his own, I'm going to assume this is all a byproduct of his own actions, is going to impact him and his ability to perform on the field. It just is. It's gonna, but. Setting aside your concerns for him as a human being and turning around and being a fan of the club, it's like, okay, that's all too bad, Sebastian. But but we gotta win some soccer games, and you got to start playing better, or we got to figure out how we're gonna get past this. And so it is something everybody's just gonna have to keep an eye on moving forward, I think.
Yeah, it's not just that too. Let's not forget that he, traditionally plays a lot of wing. And now they've moved him as this free 8 kind of position. And then when they went 4-4-2, he got dumped, and then he got moved out to sort of an old school, wide midfield, winger-ish, midfielder-ish kind of thing. So there's been a couple of shifts in his responsibilities. Again, all that's happening while he's having these other on-field issues. So it's not surprising the guy's not clicking on all cylinders. Again, also, he just turned 30. So you remember in the preseason, people were talking about him coming in as like the best shape of his life. Well, then he had like multiple injuries in the spring and didn't play a single preseason game, right? Mm-hmm. He had missed all of them. So maybe he was late getting into the groove of the season and getting fit. And maybe, see, there's lots of things going on here, lots of little bitty stuff, and it all kind of adds up to a flatness. But you're right. Eventually you got to get him going. You have a team now that has an extra striker in Jimenez. You have these wings. Obram did well today. Kamungo did well in the game the other day. You got other people, different formations. Nobody's a lock anymore. If he doesn't consistently perform and doesn't show in training, he's going to start not playing as much, and that can spiral into a downhill thing. Some of that comes down to coach management. Coach is going to have to manage a guy that's going to be important as we come through the next 2 months of the season.
Yeah, but it's also critical to remember that Lletget is a key component to their plan for this being a successful season.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Like they can't just afford to have him go into a mental dump because he's broke up with his fiance and expect to achieve the goals they had this year. He's just too critical in my mind to what they had planned.
Yeah. No, he was a massive part of it. I think you and I both picked him to be the assist leader on this team, and right now I think he's got none. I don't have that open right in front of me. Let me look real quick.
Yeah. So you know what I mean. You know what I'm saying. It's just
I totally agree.
Yeah. Okay. Interestingly, I just saw that it was tweeted out that Keaton Parks, the Frisco kid, also got a national team call up. He's on the list. So somebody else must have left. So
Roll Dan.
Okay. Well, so that's interesting because not only is it interesting from the aspect that he's a Dallas area kid, but he also is a key component to NYCFC. So if he gets time, maybe he doesn't start on Saturday. So something to add there.
And a noted, I will never play for FC Dallas guy.
Yes, that's right.
Because of Armando Ples.
That's right. Because of what?
Because of Armando Ples, the coach.
Yes.
That was the one from the infamous press conference moment. He coached Keaton's first academy team.
Yes. Yes. You can find out more about Mr. Ples in the famous The List article over at thirddegree.net. All right. I
got one more thing for training I want to talk about.
Sorry.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've talked to Coach about for 2 weeks now is the upcoming schedule of the next 2 months, May and June, because the Open Cup starts, and that puts a added load. And so effectively, like if you look through the next 2 months, and if you win a game or two in the Open Cup, you're looking at a team that's going to be playing basically every 3 days for like 2 straight months. And so that's what I meant about man management. So you're going to see over the next couple of weeks and into the next 2 months, you will see from time to time randomly a player start that you might be shocked to see start. You'd be like, whether it might be like Nkosi sitting this last weekend, maybe there's going to come a game where Sam Junka is going to start instead of Farfan. There's going to come a game where Ima Tuamasi is going to start instead of Giovanni Jesus, and go through the whole team. You're going to see this happen because no one can play every 3 days for 10 weeks. So they're going to have to manage the roster, and then after that, you're going to have the Leagues Cup thing, and depending on how far you go in that, et cetera, et cetera. If you crap out of that, you'll get a little break. But man management and rotation is going to factor in over the next several weeks and over the next month and a half to 2 months. So just expect every once in a while, oddly, to see a person you're like, what the hell? That'll be why. You will probably not pause. Pause will probably go every game, but everybody else probably will take a break. Like you'll see Paxton probably not start a game somewhere along the line soon, I would imagine.
To pick back up on the field size topic from a little bit ago, now the game, don't forget, is not being played at Yankee Stadium. It's being played at the Mets Stadium, Citi Field, over in Queens, which, by the way, is adjacent to where they're building, or at least in theory, are going to go. And I'm doing very, very large air quotes with my fingers.
Right.
Build their stadium here sometime before the turn of the decade. Giggle snort. Is the fact that because it is a baseball stadium, it's going to be this weird, demented field size. And you were talking about how Dallas had and this is something all teams do, is that they reline their own practice field to try to account for it. Glenn Crooks, who is not related to Dan Crooke, is the radio guy for NYCFC, and he's a really, really nice guy. And he makes a regular effort to try to promote the fact that the field at Yankee Stadium is a proper 70 by 110, and and it always makes me cringe a little bit because I really like Glenn, and I know he's doing the good soldier bit. But there's no, and I don't know how much it changes when it goes to Citi Field. I don't know if there's some more room. Maybe it's bigger at Citi Field than it is at Yankee Stadium, but there's just no way that field is 70 yards wide at Yankee Stadium. You don't have to be a grounds expert to just eyeball that thing and go, yeah, oh my God, that thing is tiny.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
Okay. No, it's you and I have looked at this, and everybody else has looked at this, over the time, and they make minor adjustments here and there. The goal is the same size, of course, but maybe the goal box is a little bit smaller, and then maybe the penalty box is a little bit smaller. And the 10 yards, the hash mark for the 10 yards is not actually 10 yards. It's more like 8, So like you can look at it from a wide angle and go, well, it looks normal. But if you line that thing up and like actually do some real measurements, or if you just eyeball it and have eyeballed enough soccer fields, there's that every player and every coach knows it's not. They don't make a big deal about it because I'm sure the league told them not to. Like Coach today didn't actually say like how much smaller it really is, but we had a laugh and a chuckle about the idea that someone said it was 70. It's not. It's more 68, 67.
Oh, I don't even think really. It's that wise, Buzz. Yeah, I think it's closer to 65, but
wherever you want to, whatever hill you want to die on how big it really is up to you, as whether you believe the club or not. I look at it and I watch the games on it, and there's no way in hell that it's 70.
We can all agree that it's not big enough. How about that?
Yeah,
right?
It's not what it needs to be. No. Yeah. And you would think to yourself, 65 versus Dallas is what, 71? Like, what's 6 yards? Well, it's not just that it's more narrow, and that 6 yards is a lot.
It is.
Yeah, it's a lot in a soccer field. It's also that it's short. Right, it's like it's 10 yards shorter than like what FC Dallas's field is. So that shrinks your ability to play that little over the top ball. Everybody that comes in there plays mid blocks or high blocks, and so you just get this pinball machine effect because it crushes the space in terms of the width. Because everybody plays a 4 across, that 6 yards crushes that space down. It takes about 1.5 yards out of each one of the gaps, each one of the vertical gaps. It takes about 1.5 yards to 2 yards out of each one of the lines horizontally in terms of your shape. That makes it really, really difficult to play through there. Turns it into a pinball game. It makes it probably look like the last game looked. Mm-hmm. Depending on how much New York presses and how much Dallas presses back, or gang and presses or whatever version of pressing you prefer, that it's going to look like either a really boring lollygag, or it's going to look like a pinball machine, one or the other. It's not going to look like sexy soccer.
6:30. Don't forget it's on the East Coast, so it's a 6:30 start. It is on Apple TV, and it is one of the free games this weekend, so you don't have to have MLS Season Pass to watch the game. You just got to log into the app and get it for the free. Okay, so that's at 6:30. The other thing I wanted to mention real quickly, and I actually brought this up with Andy on the radio show on Saturday, is the fact that I continue to contend the most underreported story that is going on in this sports media market at this moment is the fact that after 20 plus years of being the butt of every Major League Soccer attendance joke you could possibly imagine, not only did Dallas field more sellouts, and we'll talk about that specifically here in a second, last season than all previous Toyota Stadium / Pizza Hut Park seasons combined. This season in 2023, they now officially have sold out 4 of their 5 home games. And I think that is a substantial thing for all of us to take note and celebrate because of all of the reasons and ridiculousness that has gone on about the location of the stadium and this Jim Jam and the other. And I just think everybody, I hope at some point, maybe it'll happen when it gets further into the season and they've continued to have this sellout streak or sellout run, that some other people in the media will pick up on it.
Yeah, I think we absolutely have to give a lot of credit to this organization. Granted, perhaps it was all triggered by the Ricardo Pepi sell and the money coming in, or maybe just over time they finally recognized that if they did certain things And I still think Austin FC, whether you want to credit them or not, their success
I agree.
definitely poked FC Dallas's ownership and said, hey, wake up, because they have been different in every phase of the organization. Now, they're not hitting on 100%, but they're hitting at a very high rate. And a lot of it is paying off. And we're seeing things, even if it's just in terms of getting people in the stands, that place is filling up at a higher rate. The advertising they're doing is spreading, and I'm seeing it in places I've never seen it before in the Metroplex. I've heard discussion that they're even going to roll it out even further in terms of more signage and advertising around, because they're finding it is being successful. It's so crazy that I now sit in games and instead of wondering, thinking to myself, man, this is embarrassing, I'm now sitting there thinking, man, when are they going to have to expand this thing?
Yeah.
When are they're going to need a new, bigger stadium pretty soon. Because if you're selling out every game, you're going to need to add 10,000 seats, man, because you don't want to be selling out every game. You want to be close to selling out every game, but you're leaving ticket money on the floor if you're sold out every game.
Yeah.
Up to a certain point, of course, there gets to be an absurdity to the thing, but you do want to have a scarcity that helps keep your demand high, and you can raise ticket prices and all that jazz. But there's going to come a time, if they continue this, where you have to have a discussion about that. And we just have to give them credit, because every phase of the organization, in my opinion, has improved. Now, they're not perfect by any means. There's still a long way to go. They're still lagging behind a lot of their teams in some of these areas. But there's a renewed effort in every area, and a lot of it is really taking off. I can't tell you how many times I walk around the facilities now and see coaches, or at least I think they're coaches, that I've never seen before. People that are hiring, people that are doing jobs out there. And I don't mean like grounds guys. I mean like guys wearing like the full-blown coaching gear and stuff. I'm like, who the hell's that? They're hiring people. They're doing things. I have a couple more suggestions if they want to ask, but it's just remarkable, the transformation of this club in the last 2 seasons. I'm not even going to go say 3. I'm going to say last 2 seasons, triggered most vividly by the new VP of marketing is the most obvious change. And man, what a joy it is to see it paying off.
Yeah, I should also address the matter of what a sellout means, because I think if you watch the game on TV, or I'm assuming because I was not there, but on TV, it was pretty obvious there was a significant section of seats in I think it was the southeastern section on the east side that had a significant portion of seats that were just missing. I'm going to guess that means somebody bought a bunch of seats, like a company, for an outing, and they didn't attend, because it was almost a very specific square set of seats that were just empty. It was a weird sight. I'm sure it looked weird in the stadium too. But again, sellouts means tickets sold or distributed, not who shows up at the stadium and puts butts in seats. So you can take that for what it's worth, because lots of teams over the years have found loopholes and used that definition to their advantage to kind of define sellouts. But make no doubt about it, what is going on in Frisco is a significant upgrade from what had been going on for the previous 15 years in terms of that. And related to your request about filling it up, now I think this is really when you begin to really dream about the idea of them getting rid of that largely unused car lot called a stage, and putting a safe standing section in there, a proper safe standing section for all the supporters groups to go in there, like we have now seen in a lot of these more modern MLS stadiums.
Yeah, there is a revenue stream from the stage that has to be figured out, but that definitely is the space that's ripe for something. And yes, like a legit vertical safe standing. On the other hand, Hunt seems to really love having the supporters be around that entrance on the south side. So there's a balance there, and I don't have an answer for that. You're right about the butts and seats part. Maybe that's the next phase, is getting people to actually show, because I agree with you completely that probably that block that was noticeable probably was a company that was like bought out 1,000 seats and said, who wants them? And like 10 people said yes. That's part of it too. Brand awareness, brand building, recognition, desire to come to the games. Those are all important things to keep building for this organization. That'll help. But to go from announced 15,000, really 10,000 in the stadium, to now announce sellout, and now 17 of 19 actually full, like 90% actually full versus like 40% actually full is astounding. And I used to be able to, like my wife and I have a season ticket. And then if I'm in town, I grab another ticket from somebody, I buy it or whatever. I used to just go to the ticket people and go, hey, stick us two together somewhere. They go, yeah, no problem. But now it's a problem. Now getting them to shift me is almost impossible. We used to be able to just move around until we found two seats. That's not really hard to do. All signs that the thing is really filling up. And it's tough for me, but great for them. And I love seeing it. And I love seeing this club making traction and doing good things. It's exciting.
All right. Again, 6:30 on Apple TV. It is the free game, Dallas at NYCFC. And then to end the pod today, Buzz, North Texas was back at it. I understand that you have good news to report this week.
Well, they took Nolan Norris back down and they got Carl Ciante back. Those two things made a huge difference, and they quit bleeding goals. So those were big wins for that team. Carl Ciante is the Haitian kid. He's 20 years old that they got from New Mexico. I understand Matt Denny actually discovered him, so credit to Matt Denny. A guy that might get to MLS. He's got some things to clean up, but a 20-year-old that gets caps for his national team is worth taking note of. Right now, the first team, they have Edwin and Facundo, so there's plenty of bodies and money already locked up there. But when one of those guys has been missing, they've called Carl into first team right away to train. So he's definitely on that level. And then Nolan, of course, I wanted to mention him because funny enough, in training today, they used Nolan as a 6'8" combination kind of player. So Nolan is smart enough and his feet are good enough to do that. And I actually asked Coach, I was like, that's really weird. He goes, well, he said, Nolan's still growing. He just turned 18 in February. So he said, we're not sure where his eventual physicality is going to be. We're not sure yet if he's going to get what size he's going to be and how quick he's going to be. So we're continuing to use him in spots that'll press his foot skills and his passing ability. It might be that he ends up being more of a 6'8" kind of player. It might be that he's going to be a center back. He came up as a left, but they also used him as a 6 in the academy all the time. So the kid is a really quality player. That's why they signed him. But this happens when you sign these late teenagers just as they're coming out of high school. The maturity between 18 to 20 to 22, this is the difference. It makes a massive, huge difference in the NFL. Well, it still matters for these kind of kids too. They're still trying to figure out what Nolan's going to end up being as a player. This happens with these teenagers. So, again, he's so good that like his presence back in the North Texas team just immediately fixed all their defensive problems. And then one other change, they made it outside back, which is weird. I want to do a thing on the website coming up soon about the foreign players that they brought in over the first, is it now 4 seasons for North Texas, and how the quality of that may or may not be. But just generally speaking, they play at home Friday night, North Texas, since FC Dallas is out of town. I would encourage everyone to go out to the North Texas game on Friday. It is a pretty good level of play. It's the best soccer you're going to find in this town other than FC Dallas. So you should go. It's a fun experience. If you're anywhere near Arlington, that is. You may not want to drive an hour to get there or anything, but
no, everybody lives much closer to Arlington than they do Frisco, Buzz.
Yeah, apparently, yes. I do.
Well, you do. Yeah.
I do love that.
I don't.
5 minutes of the game's over, I'm up at my house. I love that. Yeah.
I bet you do.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. Anything else for this particular episode of the pod that you'd like to get into?
Well, Frisco, the city of Frisco did a FC Dallas Day, and they honored the 3 teams that won Dallas Cup groups, which is there was one on the girls' side. I think it's 06. They're going to be mad at me. Get that wrong. ECNL, which is the top level, and then the 12s and 13s for the boys won, and so they were all honored at like a city presentation. So like all those 3 teams were like up in front of whoever. I just thought that was really cool, for those kids to get that kind of recognition from the city of Frisco.
Yeah, I think it is the 06 girls team because a teammate of mine on my Sunday league, his daughter Holly Storer is she's the one that hit the double banger. She's so good. She's really good. Yeah, he was bragging on her.
I forgot to tell you this, Peter. I was going to open with this, and it totally slipped my mind.
What?
You've talked about that young girl Holly and your teammate Wayne.
Yeah,
I played in high school with Wayne.
You played with Wayne?
Wayne and I were at Lamar High School together.
Really?
Yeah. He's either the exact class as me or maybe 1 year. I think he's my same class from Lamar. I mean, I think we literally played together in high school and maybe even on some rec teams.
Yeah.
So like I've known, I mean, he and I have not been like close buddies since we were kids or anything, but just like I played Little League Baseball with Corby Davidson, I played high school soccer with, I'll show you my team picture sometime with Wayne in it.
Okay.
From my Lamar soccer glory benchwarming days.
Yeah, it's one of the best things about playing with the group of guys that I play with is all these guys have kids of high school to college age. Not all of them, but many of them have kids that are high school, college age that are all really good players. Holly is one that she scored a couple of great goals in the Dallas Cup last year. She did it this year. I can't remember if she's recruited to go somewhere, but Wayne is a great guy. By the way, he's a really good player himself and a good human being.
He is.
He's a great dude. That's an awesome deal. And it was funny related to this yesterday, San Diego Loyal, or do they pronounce it Loyal or Loyal?
It's just Loyal.
Okay, San Diego Loyal put out a promotional tweet with Camden Riley, who is this redheaded kid who plays for them in the USL Championship. Well, Camden is a kid that played at Pacific. He's a really good baller himself. He got drafted by Kansas City. We actually had him on the kick around when he got drafted by Kansas City because he's from here. He played at Flower Mound and for the Texans, but he is the son of one of my other teammates, Mike Riley, and his brother Brian, who both play on our team. Their interesting claim to fame is that they were living in the New York area way back when, and they both attended Pele's original inaugural game in the United States at Randall Island, ironically against the Dallas Tornado, and they actually still have their tickets and stuff from being at that game as kids way back in the 70s. Isn't that cool?
That is cool.
Yeah.
That's a fun ticket to have.
Yeah.
I went to some Dallas Tornado games when I was a kid, when I was about 11 or 12 over there when they played at Cowboys. I think it was only one season they played there at Irving Stadium.
Texas Stadium. Yeah,
Texas Stadium. We're old enough to remember those glory days of the horrible North American Soccer League.
Yeah, I've driven us way off course. I apologize, and I'm ruminating on my personal life, and I'm sure everybody stopped listening to the pod 5 minutes ago. But I just thought that was interesting that you play with Wayne. That's really cool.
Cool to see a kid in the USL, and yeah, I'm sure Wayne could easily tell you that he was a much better player than me in high school. I was a terrible player at that stage of my career because fear is the mind killer. It wasn't until I got in college that I realized that I was just as good as anybody else and learned how to actually play.
Yeah.
But he's a good player.
Related to Camden, since you mentioned that, Camden got drafted by Kansas City. He played with Swope Park for a little bit, left, got frustrated. I shouldn't say that. I don't want to say he got frustrated. He left Swope Park, ended up going and playing at, what's the Rio Grande team?
RGV.
He played there for a bit and then got an opportunity to go play for Landon Donovan in San Diego. And while Landon is no longer the manager of that particular club, he raved about Landon as a manager. Absolutely loved playing for Landon. So just, something to keep an eye on. Maybe
I think Landon would be a great manager in a national team environment. I don't know that he's interested in that, but I think he'd be really good with that, not full time of like coming in and out kind of vibe and player identification. I think that would be his sweet spot if he was interested. I'm not saying give him the national team job. I'm just saying in that environment, you start him as an assistant or with the 20s or something like that. I think he'd be really good if that was his desire, but I'm not sure it is or not. I certainly can't speak for Landon.
I don't think anybody can ever really pin Landon down on what he wants to do with his professional life at any particular moment.
Well, he probably has enough money. He doesn't care. Yeah. Probably. Like Dempsey doesn't care.
Yeah, probably not.
Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer90.com, your place for FC Dallas, North Texas Soccer Club gear, and U.S. national team gear. And that includes the new FC Dallas One Planet kit. That's this year's MLS Adidas Parlay Ocean Plastic Material, recycled material. What a great project that is. It's a new way to do kits. They've been doing it for a couple of years now in the league. Dallas's this year is really good. Use code 3rd Degree at checkout. Get 20% off your entire order. And I believe it works on that kit. Some exclusions do apply.
All right. Then if there is nothing else, Buzz, thank you, sir, again for your time and efforts and hard work. And everybody loves you.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks for hosting, and thanks for helping me fill up with Dan missing.
Yeah. Well, hopefully Dan will be back sometime soon and fill us with his merry British cheer, as he always does. Thank you, FC Dallas Curious fan. We will speak to you next week on another episode of Third Degree, the podcast.
Go, Luton.
Third Degree. Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.